Alrighty. Hey, worst bowl week. How are y'all? Y'all doing good? Yeah. I didn't think I'd be at the game, but now I will be at the game. So you'll probably see me at the game. I'll be wearing a Fear the Horn shirt and a Canyon Cougar hat. And people will be like, "What is wrong with you?" And be like, "I'm just a man of the Lord." So, hey, if you're new here, you're visiting, this is your first time here, my name is Brent Iswell, I'm the high school pastor. And why don't we do this, because this was weird last week. Like, I have like a full section here, and then I got the sporadic section. So I'm going to ask all you guys on the back row if you'll move into this section right here. So this is weird, just having an empty section. So that way y'all can all kind of fill in. We can get a little closer. I don't feel like I'm 100 miles away from y'all. I feel like this is weird, so I'm going to scoot up some. But last week, if you're joining us for the first time, I'm going to catch you up on what's going on. Last week, we started this new series called The Fighter. And we said, hey, if there's anything we all do very well, is we all do a good job at fighting. We fight because we want, and all this stuff. And last week, we said, ultimately, it all starts with honor. It starts with honor. It starts with us honoring our parents. And we said that at the beginning, it says, you aren't responsible. We said the bottom line last week, we said, you are not responsible for how your parents act, but you are absolutely responsible for how you act. See, I can't control my parents. I'm not responsible for how my parents are. I was reminded of that this week. This week has just been totally crappy. Today, my dad was supposed to fly in town tonight at 5 o'clock. And I was going to get to go hang out for the next 3 days with my brother and my dad, but my dad got sick. And I was reminded by this thing, I can't control what's going on in my dad's life. I can't control if he gets sick. I can't control how he acts. And so instead of hunting for the first time with my brother and my dad for the first time in 11 years, us getting to hang out, it's going to be another probably 6 months before we all get to hang out. Hopefully we get to do this, Lord willing. So today has just been kind of blah. And I thought it was kind of interesting. I said, you know, here we are. I'm going to talk to students about relating to their parents. And some of you right now, like if you're, to be honest, you can't stand your parents. And I just thought, here I am, I'm 16 hours away from my parents. I'm 37 years old. And I'm like sad because I didn't get to hang out with my dad. And I said, you know, so you should be grateful if you get to live with your parents if they're here. Because one day you won't live close to them maybe. And you'll be very far from them. And I promise you, whether you admit it now, you will most likely you will miss them. But what's crazy is that what I've learned over the years, especially now as a dad, is all conflict stems from one thing, and that's perspective. Like if I'm going to get in an argument with someone, well, I'm going to have from my perspective a reason that I'm going to argue with you. There's a reason I'm going to go to the mat on this one. There's a reason I'm going to complain about something. It's because of perspective. Because when we choose to fight, it's because we end up not getting what we want. We don't get our way. And the problem that often lies here, guys, is you have a limited perspective. And I'll illustrate it this way. Okay, so October's coming up and December's coming up. So in our family, October is Eli's birthday. December is Christmas, of course, but 2 days after Christmas is Mackenzie's birthday. Total gypped off. She gets born 2 days after Jesus, so that's just like the worst. So we still have not had a birthday party in the last 2 years for her. Yes, we're horrible parents. The last parent she had was in Atlanta at Chuck E. Cheese. And that was 3 years ago. And so, yeah, great Father of the Year award. But we're going to do a birthday for her. We said we're going to start doing them in the summer. We're going to do half birthdays for her so she doesn't get ripped off. But this is what I know. If I was to take Eli, see, my kids when you do the weirdest things as parents. But we have like a chart in our house on our wall upstairs. It has these stars on it. And so our kids earn stars at night. If they earn stars for going to bed and not getting out of bed, they get a star. If you've ever babysat my kid, you're like, yeah, those stars should be like this big, because Eli will always try to sneak downstairs and be like, I want you to scratch my back. And I'm like, oh my gosh, go to sleep. And so they get the stars, and if they get up out of bed, they lose 2 stars. They only get 1 for being good, but they lose 2 if they misbehave. So we make the consequence even worse. Like, they don't get up, it's been awesome. Now we get to watch TV at night without them coming down. But anyway, at the end of the deal, our kids will be able to go and get like a treat. Like, we'll go take Eli to Target, and he gets to buy, he's got to get like 27 stars or something. Like, he's got to be good for a month. And so he would take him to Target, and maybe I'll buy him a Wii game, like Lego, something for 20 bucks. Well, this is how things could go down. Let's say Eli earned his money, or let's say he earned his stickers, and so now, because he's not, he's 6 years old, he's not carrying around lots of cash. He's earned enough prize stuff, has enough money, and we go to Target, and he goes, hey man, this is what I want, Dad. I want Legos Harry Potter or whatever, or I want Legos Batman, or I want Legos this. And all of a sudden I go, no, I don't think you need to get that. And he's like, why? Why don't you get it? I said, you just need to trust me on this. He said, well, is there something wrong with it? Is it bad? No, I just need you to trust me. And I go, well, this stinks. And so Eli is so mad at me. He's like, this is ridiculous. This game is rated E for everyone, or whatever it is. He's like, I've earned my money. Why can't I buy this? Well, what I know is Eli doesn't know is that his grandmother has bought this game for him, and she's given it to him in a week. And I know in a week he's going to open up this present, and he's going to all of a sudden, his whole perspective is going to change. Suddenly, Dad's going to go from being a total jerk and a meanie and an idiot now to, he didn't want me to waste my money on something he already knew I was going to get. See, there was nothing wrong with the movie. I mean, the video game, there was nothing wrong with that. He'd earned the money to do, but I had something that my son that was lacking, and that was perspective. And I knew what was coming down the line for him. And there's times in life, there are going to be people around you that are a lot smarter than you and a lot older than you and a lot more wise. And the reason they're wise is not because they're awesome, it's because they're older. And they've stumped their toe or hit their head more times than you have. And so they have this thing called wisdom. And sometimes our parents look at us, even when we're 37 years old, and they speak truth into our lives. And we go, well, there's nothing wrong with this, or there's nothing of this or this. And the thing that we have to realize that there's a perspective going on. It's limited. You know, when you get mad at your mom because she says, hey, I want you to go clean your room or go take out the trash, and you're like, what in the world? Because you're on Instagram trying to figure out who's going to be your woman crush Wednesday, or your man crush Monday. Or maybe you're like mad at your dad because, you just started driving. Maybe this is you started driving. You're like, hey, we're going over to Ryan's house, or I'm going over to so-and-so's house. And then all of a sudden, your parents find out, they look on your phone, and they see they got all these trackers. They have all these trackers now. You can track where's my phone things, so your parents know where you are. Back in the day, then you had to have like a bracelet around your ankle or something to do something like that. You'd be like walking around with a dog collar. What in the world is that? My parents are tracking where I am. But basically, they find out where you are, and they're like, I saw that you were at Sonic last night. I thought you were Ryan's. I was like, I was at Ryan's, but we went to Sonic. I didn't think I needed to call you and tell you we were going to Sonic. And so your parents get mad. And you go, well, why? Well, your parents have perspective that you don't have. But from your perspective, it's like they're just being overprotective and they're being crazy. And maybe you don't think it's a big deal, but this is what I want you to understand is that when we want to have things our way and not their way, God's never going to be honored in that. And so the bottom line tonight is that we would ask, before we get to the bottom line, would be this, is maybe that what if we leaned into a new idea? What if we leaned into an idea that maybe instead of trusting in our perspective, our limited perspective, and what if we leaned into the position that God has placed over us as authority? And that's the bottom line. If you're a note taker tonight, you'd write, God wants us to honor the position of our parents over our perspective. So it doesn't matter if you're 37, you're 42 in the back, you're 12 years old in here because you snuck out of the middle school room and you're just kind of hiding out here. It doesn't matter who you are or where you came from. God looks at you the same and He goes, it doesn't matter if you're Lyman Scola or you're Russian. He looks at you the same and He goes, all right, you both come from a father and a mother, and He goes, I want you to honor them. And He goes, I want you to honor the position that God has established over you, being the family, being the dad, being the mom over you, and not your perspective that you have in life. And that's hard as a teenager. I know this is extremely hard to do, especially if you're like me and you're really strong-willed. And what's incredible is if you're strong-willed like me and you want to fight about everything, I've had to, like my therapist once told me this. She goes, Brent, you have to learn what is, or life coach, whatever you want to call her. She goes, hey, you've got to decide what is a 50-cent issue or what is a $5 issue. She said, if you blow up all the time on everything like it's a $5 issue, no one's going to take you serious. But if you can stay calm and you can stay level, and I feel like I have done that for years now. But I go, when I make a big deal now about something, it's not like I'm just making a big deal about everything. If I'm going to make a big deal, like at the Gauntlet, I looked at two guys, and I remember I was looking at Clayton and I looked at Taylor, and we were talking. They're like, "Oh, why are we going to do this?" And I said, "I know, I don't necessarily like this, but hey, I'm going to do this because I want to honor some people." I said, "I just ask you to trust me." So I said, "I'm not a big rule guy. We don't have all kinds of rules." They said, "You know what? You're right. It's not a big deal. We'll do it." Because that's not who I am. And I realized that when we finally, yes, it was the shirts, but I go, but I remember going, hey, it's not about perspective. It's not about, but it's like when I finally made that an issue, because I don't make everything an issue, they're like, all right, well, Brent made this an issue, so we probably do need to honor this. And it wasn't a big deal. We just moved on. No one cared. No one freaked out. It was great. And I think for us is that we have to get into this mindset that, hey, it's difficult to honor our parents. And God has a sense of humor. One day you're going to have kids. And here's the reality for me. I have 3 kids that all have strong personalities. And it's like, no, what? Man, it's like, my daughter, she is the most, she is so persistent. Good night. I'm like, I could not imagine what this is going to be like when this girl is cute as pie, and she's 16. She's already adorable. She's got little kindergarten boys telling her they love her and think she's beautiful. And I'm like, you throat punch those dudes, throat punch them, throat punch. But I'm like, what in the world? But she's like, well, why? Why not? I'm like, what in the world is going on? Well, why? Because my daughter has this limited perspective. And here's the key, guys. Mackenzie's perspective is usually limited to one person. And that's herself. And she is the most selfless person in our family other than my wife. Mackenzie was the kid that we had when she would go and get treats from Susan. She would always set the example of like, I'm getting a treat for me and I've got to get 2 more for my brothers. Eli was like, I'm getting 1 treat for me, 2 for me in honor of my brother and sister. He was that kind of kid. And Isaiah's been really good now. He's following his sister's likeness in that. But I think tonight that if we're really honest, and if we'll really quiet our hearts, and we'll really just think for a second of some of the stuff that we've argued with our parents about, or maybe you argue with friends about, that ultimately if you could step back from it and look, that maybe that you could have some humility tonight and realize that maybe some of your perspective is limited. And maybe the reason that your parents don't like that guy, or maybe don't like that girl, is like every time that you're with them, you're caught in a lie. And every time that you're telling a lie, the common denominator is always that guy. And if we step out of it, then the perspective is this: you are not making a case for him. I told someone this week. I said, when me and Ebby dated, we weren't allowed to date for like 1.5 years. Her parents did not like me. I don't think I should have dated her. I was crazy, wild hair, smoking cigarettes, had heavy metal sticks all over my car. What in the world she saw me, I have no clue. But I know what she saw, and I've become that. But I remember, I'm thinking, if Mackenzie's bringing this home, I'm going, dude, I'm glad God's working in your life, but he's going to have to work a little more before you're going to date my daughter. But I remember there was a whole period of time where Ebby did not honor her parents. We used youth group to date. We would hang out and still do things. I think we even probably went to the movies several times, like when we were supposed to be in class. She was supposed to be in college in class. She'd cut class and we'd go to the movies. Yeah, it was not good. And I was causing her to be like the devil child. And but I remember, guys, as an adult, I'm married. Walking in one night, just convicted from the Lord. And I remember I broke down in front of her dad and started crying. I said, hey, I owe you a big apology. He said, what are you talking about? I said, I did not honor you. There was a period of time where I didn't honor you. And I didn't encourage your daughter to honor you. And I'm sorry. And that wasn't how I should have treated you. And I regret how your daughter disobeyed you because of my leadership. And he laughed and he said, Brent, we've forgiven you a long time ago for that. If we wouldn't, you would be part of our family. But there came a time where I realized that I always felt like her dad was the bad person. And it was because I had a limited perspective. that I wasn't spiritually where I needed to be in a relationship with her. And because of that, we have some regrets in our relationship that we wouldn't have had if I would have been in a different place spiritually. And maybe that you would consider tonight that maybe that your parents are not so dumb, that maybe the reason they're making a big deal about something is maybe there's something going on that you just can't see. And maybe that you would just choose to honor them in spite of what you're able to see. So tonight what we're going to do is we're going to look at an Old Testament passage and we're going to look at the New Testament passage. We're going to look at the last chapter in the Old Testament, the book of Malachi. Malachi is the last Luke's writing, he's going, it's not like some random thing. He's like, no. This guy is your son who's coming. Your son is about to be born. He's the guy 400 years ago was talking about. And that's who your child is going to be. And he's going to make way for the one that's to come to be the Messiah. And he's going to turn the hearts of fathers to their children, and the disobedient to the wisdom of the righteous, and make ready a people prepared for the Lord. So here at the end of the Old Testament and the beginning of the New Testament, we've got God emphasizing through His Word one thing, and what is it? It's redemption, it's restoration. And how does God paint this beautiful picture of restoration? He chooses to, in all the ways that God could choose. I mean, there's a million different ways you could illustrate this. God chooses to use the relationship between a father and his son, between a child and their parent, to demonstrate how He is going to bring restoration to the world through Jesus. And I would think it would be very safe for us to say that if that is how God, the God of the universe, the God that breathed you into existence, chose to illustrate how his desire in Malachi, talking about fathers. We're not talking about earthly father. When he's talking about the people, and they knew this, he's talking about Abraham. He's talking about Moses. He's talking about Elijah. He's talking about all the major prophets, the fathers of their faith who were waiting for the Messiah. He goes, he is going to turn their hearts towards you rebellious people, you crazy, wicked children. He's going to turn your hearts towards the faith of your fathers. And God looks at, and in the New Testament, He say the same thing. He's going, I'm going to turn fathers to their children. And He says, I'm going to turn, He goes, the disobedient to wisdom. And that maybe in this whole thing of like, man, our parents suck, or you don't know, Brent, they grounded me for this, or you know, I don't have a smartphone, I've got a dumb phone. Maybe the reason that you don't have a smartphone is because you can't handle a smartphone. Do you know what the average age a child exposed to pornographic images now on the internet? Anyone want to say? 9. My son is 2 years away from that. And you know what number one way they find it? Google. They're not going to smuttv.com. It's Google. Because a boy hears a word at school, Eli's going to hear a word like orgy and be like, what the heck is that? I don't look stupid, so I'm going to go home. I'm going to type orgy and hit images, and that's what's going to pop up. And you got a group of parents trying to raise kids, being you, that never had the internet. Do you realize your parents grew up, they didn't have the internet? And so when they're freaking out, you're going, why are they freaking out? Well, yeah, because your parents have no clue. For some of you guys, it's just ridiculous what you do on the internet. They have no clue that you use PlayStation 3 is like a gateway to porn. And you think it's all funny, and God goes, no, you're freaking screwing your ability to have intimacy with your future spouse up. And those images you're putting in your head, they're never going to go away. And God goes, maybe the reason some of these rules that your parents are putting on, it's not because your parents are lame or trying to be a jerk. Maybe your parents are trying to help you and prevent you from having some regret that you're going to freaking hate one day. I mean, I laugh. I go, I thank the Lord, and I'm not going to brag because one day I can struggle. I'm very thankful I do not struggle with internet pornography. I really don't. I'm not saying I would be immune to it one day. I probably could. But I can tell you this. When I was younger, I did look at the stuff. I hung around people that did, and I can tell you guys, those images in my head, I wish I could get them out. And here's the saddest thing, is I can't. And you know when the worst time this is me being really honest, you know when the worst time that stuff comes to my mind? It's always before I do the Lord's Supper. And I literally have to just pray and get on my knees before God. I say, God, why in the world I would have these crazy thoughts before I'm about to take in this? But I'm going, God, I want you to cleanse my heart. I don't want to be like this. I'm being as transparent as I can be here, guys. And some of you just think it's so fun and you just want to do this and your parents are being lame. No, your parents are being awesome. And some of you, your parents need to stop being your friends. And they need to start being your parents. God hasn't called your parents to be your friends. I have the rest of my life to be friends with Eli, but while he's in my house, I'm not called to be his friend. I'm called to be his dad, and I'm called to be his leader. And I know at times he's going to think I suck. And he's going to think I'm obnoxious. And he's going to think I'm an idiot. And that's all right, because that's going to be hard. Because it's hard now, and he's 6 years old when he tells me that I stink. And it breaks my heart, because I'm going, I feel like an idiot. I'm like, why does my kid hate me? As I hear Brandon being goofy. And I think it's crazy, I kind of got on a random sidetrack there, but I think that God chooses to paint a picture here, man, that's so powerful of how much He loves the relationship between parents and their children. And He uses it to demonstrate the relationship that He would have with humanity and how He would want to restore, that He would desire to turn the hearts of moms and dads to their children. You go, how does this all apply? Well, this applies in this way. I think I wrote this. I said, the nation of Israel and all of humanity have one thing in common. We want what we want because we're selfish people. I mean, we want what we want because we're selfish people. It doesn't like you know what it's like to become a youth pastor. You go, I'm not selfish anymore. I'm a man of God. No, I can promise you, ask my kids and my wife, I can be so selfish. But I go, I also recognize, that's something I have to fight against. Because if I always do what Brent wants to do, it's not always going to be what God wants. And sometimes God's going to ask me to do things that I'm not going to think would make sense. But God's reminded me it's not just about perspective. You see, in the time of Israel, when they chose to rebel, and when Israel was rebelling, they constantly rebelled. God would let them go to slavery. They would come back. Oh, Lord, you're awesome. They'd go rebel, and God let them become captives again. I mean, it's like, how many times have you said, let's be honest, you had to raise your hand like, God, I promise I'll never do this again. And we find ourselves doing this. All of us have been there, It's like the kid at the party drinking. I remember my junior year, I throwing up one night. I'm going, what, God, and I did keep this. I said, God, if you get me through this night, I'm not doing this again. And I never liked drinking ever after that. And I was just very thankful. I said, God made me sick as a dog, and I didn't want to do it again. But we rationalize, we make these deals with God. God, if you help me do this, I'll do this. If you do this, please. And that was the people of Israel for years. For thousands of years. But ultimately, it boiled down to this. That we believe that our perspective, when I say perspective, I think it's on the screen, it says, what we feel like we deserve. It ultimately boils down to what we believe we deserve is more important than the position God's placed over us. See, when we bow up to our parents, it's not that your parents, you're saying, oh, no, you're saying to God, God, what I want is more important than the authority you've established over me. Even if your parents aren't believers. And we get the urge to have things our way, we stir up conflict, and conflict turns our hearts towards everything else but our father and our mother. But God wants to turn our hearts towards our parents, because when our hearts are turned towards our parents, our hearts are turned towards God. See, as much as I wanted my dad to be here to go hunting with me, and I was sad, and I know that sounds weird to you, but I'm serious. When you live 16 hours away from your parents and you see your dad 3 times a year, it sucks. There's no way around it. My kids hardly know my parents, and that's hard. But at the end of the day, there's a part of me that goes, you know what? I know my dad's sick. I know my dad struggles with vertigo. And if he gets on an airplane, he's going to be miserable here. And I don't want to watch him like that. And I have to go, my perspective is like, all right, God, you're in control. But I have to step back and go, no, he needs to take care of himself. And this can't be about just me and I love to go hunting. But I need to have some sensitivity to my dad that, he's probably really sad too that he's not going to be here. And I don't need to make him feel like crap. And in order for us to turn our hearts to your parents, you have to surrender your right to be right. Some of us in this room, you have a clear choice. You can either choose to be right, or you can choose to have a relationship. You can either choose to be right, or you can choose to have a relationship. I had a best friend in high school. His name was Chad Bittman. Chad was he kind of reminded me of Ryan Vite. He knew every statistic about Willie Mays and all these kids. When I first met Ryan Vite was like, oh yeah, he would name off everybody from the Braves as a freshman. He knew every stat, everything. I was like, what in the world? And I'd be like, man, so in 1942, when did Willie Mays take a crap? And I was like, seriously, what in the world? You could know everything. I'm like, it's just so weird. I'm like, he would make me so mad because he always knew, he always had to know, he always had to know this. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? We used to fight, and I'm thinking, it was crazy. But I think instead it was sometimes I'm like, dude, you don't always have to be right. Even when you know you're right, have you ever met that person that even when they know they're wrong, they're still not going to admit they're wrong? And you're like, why am I even friends with you? Some of you in the room, this is what you need to discern. Look here. You need to stop always having to be right with your parents. And maybe stop fighting to be right and actually fight for the relationship. Because you can either build a case against your parents or you can build a bridge toward them. Some of you just knock the legs out of the bridge every single day. And you don't realize that maybe the only person that's going to reach your parents for the gospel is you. And maybe instead of always having to be right, maybe that you're going to choose to, instead of argue for the case for yourself like you're some awesome lawyer, maybe you're going to build a bridge towards them that says, I love you. And the question you need to be asking myself is, which am I choosing? As we said last week, it all starts with honor. Some of you, you need to honor your parents. And some of you, the reason that it's hard for you to honor is because you don't have a good relationship with your parents. And this is what I know. Anytime that we don't have a relationship, rules without relationship always leads to rebellion. Rules without relationship always is going to lead to rebellion. It's the reason that I can have a kid come in here and they can come to my office and I can go, if I don't know, it's like the parents are like, hey, will you fix my kid? I'm like, I'll meet with your kid. I don't know if I'm going to fix them. But I'm going, if I just met you, you're probably not going to trust what I have to say. But like, if Katie Steele comes to my office and she has questions, I've known Katie for a long time now, I think there's a reason she's going to trust me and listen to me. Is a thing that Stuart Hall taught me years ago, is he goes, dude, your job is to build relationships that have the weight to bear the weight of the truth that you have to deliver. And there's a reason. There's some of you, you know, like I told the guys at our small group Bible study the other day, and then freshman guys at Colton said, hey guys, you need to listen. He's not being a jerk. He's just, he loves you, he cares about you. But I told him, I said, guys, if you don't do your reading, I'm telling you all to go home this Sunday night. So if you didn't do your reading this Sunday, I told all the guys, I said, this is over. I said, I'm giving up putting my kids to bed at night. I'm sacrificing time away from my family to pour and invest in y'all's lives. But those guys in the room, most of them, like, I feel like, you know, if I don't have to probably ask, but if he thinks that I care about him and I like him, he might say, I would think he would say yes. He knows I care about him. But if you just walked in the room, you know, I mean, you don't know me from Adam. You're going, well, how do I know? You could be some just weird dude. Y'all could be a cult. I don't know what's going on. I mean, seriously. Like, where's the Kool-Aid? I mean, I don't know. But I mean, I'm thinking, all of us. But here's what I know. You don't trust anyone that you don't have a good relationship with. Well, here's the deal. The reason some of you don't trust your parents and you always are fighting is because your relationship with them stinks. But here's a newsflash. You have some responsibility in that. It doesn't give you a carve-out. You feel because you're parents and you don't have the sense of connectedness that you get a pass. God says, no, you don't get a pass. Ephesians 6 last week. Children, honor your parents, that it may go well with you in life. It doesn't say honor your parents if they're being cool or they're being godly or whatever. It says, no, honor your parents, because God's established them as your mom and dad. You don't get a pass on that. And maybe that you would come to the realization that you can begin to change this, that you are responsible for your actions as a 15-year-old girl, as a 16-year-old guy in the room. And that you can be the one to initiate relationship. Because once you've allowed a bridge to be built, you may begin to see why mom and dad are acting a certain way. God might just begin to open your heart to that they're not that dumb after all. But even if you don't agree, because sometimes you're not. I mean, there's sometimes I don't agree with my parents. But I still go, hey, that's the only mom and dad I have. I still need to honor them. And that's hard, guys. When you're 37 years old and you're in their house at Christmas, and I mean, ask any parent here who's in there, when you go stay with your parents or your in-laws, 3 days max, buddy, and I mean, I don't know how awesome they are. You're like, man, it's time to flew the coop. Because it's like, man, you just like, you don't want to, you're used to being the ruler of your own roost. But God looks at us and He says to you, or He says to me, He said, it all starts with honor. And as we land here tonight, He goes, thinking about what it means to have a relationship. I mean, think about this. Think about what it means to have a relationship. I mean, think about this, Reese. I mean, you sit beside Sophia. Like, you guys, I would imagine y'all probably text some during the week, right? All right? Well, if Sophia didn't talk to you for like the next 6 months, would you feel like if I asked you in 6 months and she hadn't said a word to you, she'd never returned any of your texts, she hadn't said anything, I'd be like, hey, Aunt Reese, how are you and Sophia doing? What would you probably tell me? You have no clue. Why? Because there's no communication going on. See, I think that, we want to just like, we don't want to sit down and have a conversation with our parents. We just want to run in and grab a toast and head out the door, and we want to do, and we don't even want to work for a relationship. We want to find them when we need money to go to the movies or go to the mall or whatever we need, or we need to fill the tank of gas. But we don't want to sit on the couch and just want to have a movie night with our parents, because that'd be totally lame. Because Billy wants to pick me up and he wants to go take me to the movies and then go to Willie's afterwards and eat a greasy hamburger. I don't know, but whatever y'all do. But I think about what a relationship means, guys. I think it takes time, it takes energy. I mean, I think about my relationship with my wife, it takes work. I mean, your relationship with your friends takes work. Why in the earth, why in the world would your relationship with your parents not take work? Any relationship that lasts over a week, guys, is going to be difficult. I would think that's why we know. That's why we tease in middle school and even in high school sometimes. The average length of a dating relationship is like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Oh my goodness, we went on one date. I deserted him, said I go to the bathroom, and I just went out the back door. My friends picked me up and took me out. It was just weird. That would be terrible. But Kayla did that the other day to someone. No, she didn't. That was so wrong. That would be bad. But I think about... So I want you to... I want you to think about this because we're almost done. What does your relationship with your parents look like? I want you looking around. I want you to, everybody close your eyes. I want you to think about this. Your mom and your dad, or whoever you live with, your aunt, your uncle, your grandparent, they're the only person that God's put in your life. And I want you to just think about this. How is your relationship with them? And if all the relationships that you have, your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your cousins or your guys that you play football with, or your guys on your baseball team, or girls on your swim team, or girls that are on your cheerleading squad. If all those relationships take effort, do you think that maybe, quite possibly, you need to be making effort with your own parents? And I want to leave you guys with a challenge tonight. I want you to begin to work hard at building some bridges towards your parents. And this is going to take time. I mean, I just think about this. Keep your eyes closed. I mean, if you're driving down San Antonio Street, you know what I'm talking about right now. It's a pain in the butt. You're always having to go around. Why? Because they're building a bridge. If you're driving down 306 every day, if you live out in Havenhood or wherever you live, River Chase, man, they're building bridges. And it's a pain in the butt right now. But there is a day coming that bridge is going to be awesome. And it's going to bear the weight of a lot of vehicles. And it's going to make life so much easier for so many people. And maybe just as these bridges, though they're inconvenient and they're painful and they take effort, maybe your family relationships are like that. But in the end, God says, if you'll start laying the foundation, if you'll start building that bridge, bring it. He goes, man, I'm gonna open wide in a relationship with your parents that you never dreamed of. And I can promise you guys, the end result is going to far outweigh the temporary pain of you having to suck up your pride to do some construction in your family. So I close with this. Will you honor your parents? And will you choose the position that God has established of them being your parents as their authority over your own perspective? So Jesus, we ask that you would just speak to us tonight. God, we thank you for those that are here tonight. It's no accident they're here. God, I thank you so many of these kids come from just awesome families. But even reminded last week, getting this text from a kid who comes from an awesome family, going, man, I needed this. me and my dad have been fighting. And God, I just pray that regardless of where we are, that you would just open our hearts, that we can always be getting better in a relationship with our parents. And that one day we're going to have kids, as I do now. And God, there's nothing in the world that scares me more than my kids not wanting to have a relationship with me. Or even worse, God, not wanting to have a relationship with you. So God, I just pray that you give strength to the kid that comes from chaos. And God, that you would give grace at a kid who comes from a house that's constantly throwing verbal assaults at them. And Lord, I pray that no student would ever feel like that they need to stay in an abusive situation. If someone's hurting them, that they wouldn't keep that secret, they would tell us. But God, that maybe sometimes instead of arguing always about the trash, that maybe we just take the trash out and realize that we're doing more than just taking the trash out or unloading the dishwasher or folding laundry. But God, we're building a bridge that's paving a way to intimacy with our parents. And it's ultimately painting them a picture of what you've done for us. That God, ultimately you did the biggest bridge, that you came down to earth and you died on the cross. Why? So that we could have a relationship with Jesus. You became sin, that you became what was cursed on a cross. And you died, taking our place. And Jesus, so that we could have life, that when you raised from the dead 3 days later, that you conquered the grave and you gave us the way, you paved the ultimate bridge to be rescued from death to life. And I pray if there's any student here tonight that's never embraced a relationship with Jesus, God, that's where they'd start. They would take you by the hand, Jesus, and they'd say, I want to know what it means to trust you, Jesus. Maybe there's a kid in the room today who's trusted Christ and they never followed the Lord to be baptized. That God, maybe they would take a step tonight to come to me or someone afterwards and go, hey, I've been following the Lord, but I've never been baptized. I need to be baptized. And God, would you give freedom to a girl in here, a guy in here, maybe a small group leader or a parent in here who's just freaked out and their heart's just beating out of their chest. That God, maybe tonight they would go home and they would look at their parents and sit them on the couch and say, you know what, I haven't been honoring you, and I'm sorry. That maybe there's a leader in the room that needs to go home and call their parents in a different state. And go, Mom, Dad, I know I haven't lived with you in 20 years, 15 years, but I just want to say I'm sorry, or I love you. Thank you for you just being the incredible parent that you were. God, we know in our hearts what you're speaking to us. God, may you give us the courage to actually step out and do that. And we love you, Jesus. Amen.